Some
Yep, we can hear you.
some people would like the opportunity to put a politician on mute. That will.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Good for you. Good for you for getting the group together. So nice to be here.
Okay. I know we are short of time, so I'm going to let Doreen get started with the question. And we will go from there. And if there's any other questions that we cannot answer today, I will speak with Sean and take it from there.
Yeah, I know a lot of them are evolving. Do you mind if I say a few words off the top? Or are you?
Oh, of course, yeah. That's what we wanted to hear.
Just mostly thanks everybody for getting together. I know we're in a very, very challenging time. Every day I'm standing up there with the Premier as we talk about the sort of steps we're trying to take around the health crisis and then the economic crisis that's underlying that health situation. It's different than the other economic downturns I've seen in my lifetime because of that underlying component of dealing with this global health pandemic and the need to address that. So I have to, every time I get to, I thank business people for what people have been doing in terms of trying to adapt in very, very, very difficult times. Certainly these are the most challenging in my lifetime, as far as, needing to do the right thing to protect the health and safety of our families and our friends and our coworkers and our employees, but also knowing that puts amazing pressure on businesses. So been working very closely with the federal government. Obviously, they are the ones with the printing press, as we say. So they're putting a bunch of programs out. I'm spending quite a bit of time trying to make sure that they move quickly and that they're clear. And I know it's challenging. They have a challenging task ahead of them, but we've been being very supportive of them to get those dollars out. And then our government's done a number of things around tax deferrals and other things as well. But mostly today, just want to the best of my ability, as Suresh said, if there are questions that we don't have the time to answer, we'll try to get them for you. There are a number of detailed questions about the program the federal government's offering. I have a pretty good understanding of it, but again, we can get people more detailed information. And throughout the course of this, hopefully we can help in terms of my office, in terms of helping liaise for people into some of the programs that are available. And I guess the other thing later on today, the Premier and I are going to be up. He's asked me to take charge with a number of my cabinet colleagues of the economic recovery plan. So obviously we need to start planning now for how we're going to be in this period now for a while. I'm happy to talk if someone's interested about how long we think that'll be. But at some point, hopefully not too distant future, we're going to come out of this. We're probably going to come initially into a bit of a different world because of the potential for issues that could flare up again or other waves. So I know that some of the most creative people in the world are people right here in the GTA that'll think about how to adapt our businesses and adapt our economy so it can be effective in the period between now and when we get a vaccine for COVID. But that said, we're also doing a lot of work to learn what people are doing elsewhere around the world, what's working in some of the places that have been through this. So Suresh, I'll turn it over to the questions, but thanks everybody for the time today.
Doreen?
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you so much, Mr. Phillips, for joining us today. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for the tremendous effort that you are putting forward during this crisis, as well as all the other leaders in our nation. Honestly, I couldn't be more proud to be a Canadian at this time based on what we're all going through. So thank you. I do have a list of collated questions from the group and I will ask them. Hopefully we'll be able to give you a few minutes back in your day so you can continue to fight the fires.
Thank you.
So the first question from, this one is related to commercial leases and tenants. If there is a plaza or a building where business owners have offices that need to be shut down to the public, and the landlords are not deferring the lease, what can the tenants do? Because the commercial lease system seems to be very tough.
Yeah, so it's one of the areas that we are reviewing as a government. We've been working with the federal government to try to help them get the specific support programs in place, whether it's their loan program or which I think is operating as of today through all the banks and credit unions. So that's $40,000 and then $10,000 of which will be forgivable. You don't need to have a lending relationship with one of the banks or credit unions. You just need to have a relationship, bank account, to access those funds. And I'm assured that process will be very efficient. We also, of course, have the income replacement program, the 75% program. That's a few weeks out, I think, but may be helpful. When it comes to rents, what I've been meeting with the more significant commercial landlords, and having very frank conversations with them about making sure that they show forbearance in terms of the tenancies. Obviously, there's there are many of the landlords also, they have businesses and they need the revenue from those businesses. But the reality today is that there's not anybody waiting to move into those spaces. And as I've said to them, the clients, the customers, and the tenants that they have today, or they've had for the last 2 or 3 years, are the most likely people to be the tenants for the next 2 or 3 years. So on the residential side, we were able to move in terms of using the tribunal that we have to stop there from being any evictions. We're looking now at what needs to be done on the residential side. But mostly we're trying to work with landlords to say, we know you have demands. Let's see how the federal money can flow. Let's understand a bit how longer this is going to go. And let's understand that we want businesses to be there when we're able to bring the economy back up.
Great, thank you so much for that response. We do realize that things are unfolding day by day, and things are done to address those situations. So thank you. The next question is in regard to the eligibility for the $2,000 a month. One of the criteria is that you should not have any earned income during that period. If some business owners are having payments trickle in from previous services that they've conducted, how will that affect the eligibility criteria?
Yeah, so it's great questions. I have a couple of notes here I'm going to read, because we will also make available to you. We have some of the most recent criteria information as it comes in. So, but essentially, as you said, that for those who had at least income of $5,000 in the 12 months previous, so someone who was working in some level, and who are expected to be without employment or self-employment income for at least 14 consecutive days in the initial 4-week period. And that period is actually retroactive, and I don't have the date here in front of me. I think what the federal government has said is that they are not meaning to be punitive about this, but they obviously want to make sure that it is fairly allocated. So I think further criteria we're happy to provide, however, through yourself or Suresh, however it's helpful. There are increasingly better descriptions of this online the federal government's providing. But I know from speaking to Bill Morneau about this quite regularly, the real objective is not to make it difficult or punitive for people, but obviously to have that money go where it's needed. So not to people necessarily who have significant other income coming in, but to people for whom that $2,000 a month is going to be a real lifeline.
Great, thank you so much, Minister, for that. The next question is in regard to the $40,000 loan applications. The eligibility requirement is to have a minimum spend of $50,000 for payrolled employees. The nature of some businesses don't allow them to hire full-time employees, but some business owners have paid over $80,000 to freelancers. Can you comment on that eligibility criteria?
Yeah, so this is an area that is still being finalized by the federal government, but I've been assured that they have a sensitivity to some businesses are using contract or other employees that wouldn't be traditionally considered as employees in payroll. So again, this is going to be administered by the banks and the credit unions, who have been some of the same people who've been asking these questions. There was also a shift in terms of some of the criteria. Again, this one was moving fairly quickly about the impact on your business. So the impacts have had to be on your business to be eligible. Those have been loosened as well. So I guess I would say I anticipate that there'll be some more clarity on it, but that issue has been raised, and the objective, again, coming straight from what the federal finance minister has been saying, is to be as flexible as possible, not have it be contingent on business structure. So if someone happens to structure their business in a way with a certain type of employee versus a more traditional type of employee, the intention is not to exclude them. But again, the best place to get the absolute answer on that will be with your bank, because they're the ones who are literally administering the programs.
Thank you for that. The next question is an interesting one. You may or may not be able to answer this, and it may not fall in your realm of work that you're doing, but it certainly does raise some really good awareness around this topic. Our government is providing $12 million in emergency funding to immediately expand online and virtual mental health services to help people of all the ages struggling during these unprecedented times. Compared to large corporations that have facilities and programs in place under their for their employees to avail of. How can small businesses with a few employees take advantage of this great funding that's available?
So that's a great question, and I'm very concerned, just from the various conversations I have with business operators and others, just about the pressure this is putting on people, not just the business and economic impacts, but the concerns about the health crisis. So we've been, along with the federal government, beginning to make some really significant investments around mental health, about $3.8 billion. This money is targeted specifically at some triage and very easily accessible programs that will be announced in the near future in terms of accessibility for them. But the idea is giving everybody access to some support. You're quite right. In fact, one of my former businesses had a product, something called employee assistance programs, which are broadly available in medium and larger sized businesses to millions of Canadians, and provide a psychosocial benefit, in a crisis or in other opportunities. Many smaller enterprises don't have access to that. So it's very much targeting a broader based program. The details of it are going to be coming out. And there are a number, the Ontario, maybe one of my guys here can get me the best location from an Ontario government point of view, just where the web location is. We'll put it up on the screen. But I'd say 2 key websites, I'd say 3. Your local public health website. Particularly, I'm in Durham. In Durham, the public health website is fantastic, but the public health units have done a very good job of providing localized information relative to COVID. And then I would say your Ontario government and the federal government portal. So I'll give you the Ontario government portal will go, and all that information is fresh and current. And the feds are doing not a bad job of that as well.
Great, thank you so much for that answer. We look forward to seeing those resources. The next question is a large one, so bear with me as I try to kind of break it down so it's understandable. This question is in regard to business loan programs. When banks defer the mortgages for 6 months, despite the interest consequence, it definitely helps Canadians and business owners to manage their cash flow for the next 6 months. However, banks are not allowing this deferral of interest payments for their HELOC mortgages or business loan programs. Specifically, the Canadian Small Business Loan Program, which is distributed through major banks. Businesses that seek the Canadian small business loans are usually startups and small businesses that do not have sufficient cash flow. However, this financing support is set up as loans via financial institutions. Here comes the question.
Okay.
The federal government and all other levels of government are making tremendous effort to support Canadians and small businesses through their monetary and fiscal policies. One of them is deferring mortgage up to 6 months. Can the federal government impose or instruct the banks who distribute their Canadian small business loans to defer up to 6 months as mortgages, since original funding source is the government?
No, I think these are, the federal government could, the answer to that is yes, the federal government could do that. They are looking at all manner of deferrals as the question pretends. There's a lot of work being done to try to make sure that we take, one of the first steps we can do is remove cash flow pressures, and this would be a good example of those. So that is an idea that I can certainly make sure gets passed along to the federal government. I should mention, just in terms of areas of deferrals that we've already partaken, workers' compensation premium deferrals for 6 months, that's about $1.9 billion across the economy. Employer health tax deferrals, so depending on your payroll level, if you have a payroll that was above $500,000, we've raised the exemption to $1 million. So that'll mean that about 90% of businesses don't pay that employer health tax anymore for this year. And then we've deferred all the rest of those payments to the tune of about $6 billion. We've also let municipalities defer property tax payments. So that'll affect both commercial and residential to the tune of about $1.8 billion. So there are a number of areas where those deferrals are happening, and I've captured that idea, and we'll share that as well. Do you mind if I share the web portal that I talked about? Just because
Yes.
This is just all of the information that relates to the program, economic program information we talked about, but also information from a broader public health perspective is available at ontario.ca/coronavirus. So ontario.ca/coronavirus. So that's if you load that, the federal site and your local public health site, you'll have a pretty good snapshot of what's going on.
Great, thank you for that. And this is the last question on the list. You can now exhale. So this question is saying that it's good to have some guidelines, such as the start date of the business account. And to qualify, these organizations need to demonstrate they paid between $50,000 to $1 million in total payroll in 2019. Most of the startups and small business and our bootstrapping businesses, startup owners do not take their salaries for years, a few years. For example, if a business owner and his or her spouse is working in their bootstrap business and didn't take their salary for the past 2 years and have full-time employees and some contract workers, let's say that their total payroll is not meeting the $50,000 in 2019. According to the current guidelines, they won't be able to qualify for the CEBA to support their business. Can the government help those businesses to survive by looking at some additional measures to see if the company is legitimate and allow the loans to support their business?
Well, we're going to, and I know the federal government as well are going to continue to look. You're right. There will be obviously companies that, for a variety of reasons, sometimes related to how they organize their business or the nature of a startup. For instance, on the deferral or on the 75% subsidy, we worked with the federal government so they would change it, because a lot of early stage businesses, the measurement was revenue reductions, and of course revenue reductions across some early stage businesses, there aren't revenue, like there's not always revenue early in the business. So they've put in some good measures there. I'd recommend you to looking at those programs, but we'll be looking for the places where there are gaps. It is worth understanding that there is a certain capacity of government. And we talked about commercial rents and the impacts there. There's 1.2 million commercial leases in Ontario. So you take that, and any program that gets applied there would obviously have to be substantial. The GDP of Ontario, most recently measured, was about $900 billion. About 60% of that is payroll costs. And so where we and if the federal government are trying to fill in is to backstop as much of that as is reasonable for two things. One, because we need to provide money for people so they can make sure that they have the dollars to get through this. We're also trying our best to make sure that when we get to that other side of this this chasm, and we're now into the recovery, that as many of our entrepreneurs and as many of our businesses are in place to pick up at that stage. So those are we are obviously looking other areas to help, but the resources of government are finite, right? We don't have an infinite amount, and because the federal government has access to the federal treasury, we're really trying to make sure that those programs get maximized for everybody's benefit.
Thank you so much for that response, as well as to all the other questions. We don't have any more questions so far, but we will look forward to liaising with your office as more questions arise. So thank you to Sean Beckett for providing your email address for us to connect with. Minister Phillips, thank you so much for your time today. The members at Connecting GTA are about 150 in number. We may be small in number, but we're very big in heart. And we are fighting alongside with you. And we encourage you that, if there's anything that you need from us as an organization, we'll be very happy to support you as well.
So thank you. It's an important group to me, and so I again thank you for the efforts you're doing through this, and for your support of not just what our government's doing, but all governments. This says, as Premier Ford has said, there's no red team and blue team and orange team right now. It's just Team Canada, and so we're all trying to pull together. And I think we need the same, and we're getting the same from our business community. So thanks very much, and thanks for putting this group together.
Thank you, and happy Easter, everyone, to your families as well.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Very much.
Hi, guys. Those of you still there, today is Azhar's birthday. So can we all sing a happy birthday for Azhar? Thank you, Angela, for making sure we do that.
Okay, make sure you're all unmuted so we can hear you sing.
I get a virtual cake. Virtual cake, that's good.
Okay, go ahead, Suresh, you start.
Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Azhar. Happy birthday to you.
How old are you? No, I was just kidding.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
guys for arranging this. It's really great. And Doreen, you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. She's gonna be a next
Thank you.
working for like a TV station, news reporter. Fantastic, fantastic.
You know,
Happy
you are-
Easter, everybody.
Doreen, you look like a newscaster.
Oh, thank you. I think.
You did a great job, Doreen. You did a
Thank
great
you.
job.
Very professional too at this.
Very
Yeah.
professional.
Thank you. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Doreen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Suresh.
For the great
Thanks. Stay safe. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
Okay, that's done.